It started with being 3 regional dialogues. The first one was in Addis Ababa in September in Ethiopia. Then for Latin America, we had the one back-to-back to the People Summit in Chile. For Latin America, I said, yes. And then we had one in Bogor in February this year for Asia. So right now the idea is to advance a little bit on the issues. We have our friend Anara from Kyrgyzstan, and she's going to present what came out of this first dialogue, face-to-face dialogue. And now we're going to follow up and make these dialogues continue and build on the different results and see how we can advance further. So this is the first webinar that we're going to have on the issue. The main objective is also to now integrate the issue of the pandemic that is very much linked with agro-industrial livestock production. I mean, we know that many of the past epidemics have had to deal with the agro-industry. And we have very interesting experts that will give us insights from their expertise. Our facilitator today, I'm going to say tonight because it's the night here in Colombia, but I know for you is the day. So today, it's Hemanta Vidanash. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce correctly the last name. He's a member of his organization, is member of the Global Forest Coalition, the Center for Environmental Justice. He's based in Sri Lanka, and he's also the focal point for the Asian region for the Global Forest Coalition. So Hemanta, over to you.
Good morning. Thanks, Thanks, everyone. I think we have 24 participants in this conversation, this webinar. The ISIS already gave some background about what is the current situation, and other than all these climate change and other battles we have been fighting, now we have COVID-19, and so many countries are already locked down, and so there are so many deaths around the world, and there are new situations coming up. And in this webinar, so we are trying to understand what are the alternatives, and how so we deal with the livestock during the COVID-19. So we have few speakers today. So we have Anara Alimkolova, sorry about my pronunciation. She's from Kyrgyzstan, and she's representing Institute for Sustainable Development Strategy Public Fund. She will give the results of the Asia Regional Dialogue just in February, held in Bogor, just before the COVID-19 issues started. So after that, we will go to a few other speakers. We have 2 hours. So each speaker will have about 10 minutes because we want to save some time for question and answers. So shall we start with Anara?
Yes, I can start. So,
please.
Good morning, everyone. So it's now 9:30 a.m. in Bishkek. So I'm glad to see all of you and welcome today in our meeting. So I would like to introduce some main outcomes from the meeting in Bogor. So there are the following trends in the Asian region. The first one is there is a rapid increase in per capita in production and consumption of beef, the increase in consumption of dairy and eggs. Due to big interventions of transnational industrialized food companies, the process of westernization of the diet is going on in the continent, in the region. Many partners mention about degradation of ecosystems thanks to increased grazing, planting of pastures for livestock in large areas. In addition, there is a big loss of traditional knowledge and loss of domestic animal breeds and adapted crops, as well as, like I mentioned, indigenous and traditional knowledge. The region imports genetically modified soybeans and corn for animal feed. There are big inequalities in the region. Both food security and food sovereignty is very important for the continent. China is a big importer, is one of the big importers of milk, dairy, and soil. Chinese agricultural investment by private companies in the last 10 years, who are buying global chains of meat and grain production, and the advance in the control of the global industry of seeds and agrochemicals. Also, that some partners, especially from China, mentioned about suffering from reduced water sources, grasslands, and their ability to feed their animals as before. If some from grassroots organizations, community groups may not recognize climate change as a cause, and the working with indigenous people and learning from their history and culture allows for broader discussion with the community that generate solutions for climate change. Different countries report loss of forest, high concentration of land, population displacement, and social conflicts, as well as a growing presence of transnational companies in the agri-food industry. The region has been particularly plagued by epidemics such as swine fever and avian influenza, which have been serious manifestations of sanitary risk of industrial meat production farm. The current COVID-19 pandemic also originated on the region. Swine fever alone has killed more than 400 million pigs in Indonesia, China, and Mongolia. All three are examples of the imbalance produced by the production model. This is in brief about the outcomes of our last meeting in Bogor. Thank you. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello. Yes.
Yes. I was it was silence. I thought maybe people didn't hear me. Okay.
No, we can hear you, but we cannot see your full face.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Now it's okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with. Thank you, Anara, for all these background and the information from the regional dialogue. Now we want to continue with the country presentations. We have Arsa Saeed. She's from Pakistan. Her organization is Roots for Equity and Women's Agricultural Workers. And she's going to spend about 10 minutes. So can we hear from Azra?
Thank you very much. I'm Azra Saeed, and I work for an organization called Roots for Equity. I will provide some it's not an update. I could not unfortunately go to the February meeting, so I will just start from what we are doing here in Pakistan with respect to sustainable livestock and what are the issues that we are facing right now. And I would like to emphasize that Pakistan is actually very, very rich in livestock. We have more than 100 million heads of different animals, which include buffaloes and cows, camels, donkeys, and other livestock. But I will focus mostly on the dairy sector, of which we have nearly 16 million cows and buffaloes together. And Pakistan is known for its indigenous varieties as well. The Neel Ravi buffalo is considered the best dairy buffalo in the world. So Pakistan is actually very, very rich in its diversity in terms of animals, as well as what we call subsistence farming. Of all farmers, 93% farmers are small and landless farmers. They are basically subsistence farmers, of which it is the government of Pakistan acknowledges itself that 89% of the small farmers are livestock farmers and are landless. So this is one point I would like to emphasize, that the country, basically the animals are being kept by people who are landless. And the areas where we have been working with women farmers, we find that these women actually go out to lease land so that they can sustain their livestock. In Pakistan, women will say our bank balance is our livestock, because if there is a sudden emergency, there is a death in the family, somebody falls sick, they count on their animals, that they will be able to quickly sell an animal and find cash. Because in general, the families, the small landless farmers have no cash at all. They really are mostly into into a barter system. And apart from looking after the livestock, they also work as agriculture workers on other people's land. It's acknowledged that mostly people keep the livestock, especially dairy livestock, for purposes of milk. And 59% of the daily time a woman spends in the rural areas is related to livestock activities. So you can understand how big is the issue of maintaining livestock is to the women. I would like to say that in Pakistan, as yet, the corporate meat industry has not really, thankfully, gotten its hold into the sector. But unfortunately, the corporate sector is coming into the dairy sector in a very big way. At the moment, only 5% of milk is sold by the corporations, and 95% of the milk is sold by small landless farmers. Now, this is something which the corporations really hate, that farmers still have control over the production and sale of milk themselves. And they have launched a multi-pronged attack on the dairy farmers. And I will mention 3 areas which are very problematic. Number one, that they are trying to get in hybrid maize as for cropping. They really want to promote cropping of hybrid maize seed, because that is considered as a fodder, as a very good fodder for cattle. And so they are promoting GM seeds in maize, so that they will have not only the market for milk, but also the corporations who are producing genetically modified maize really want to get into the country, so that they can control the livestock fodder sector as well. And they are talking about varieties of maize seed, GM maize seed, which will increase the manure of animals. And the manure is being targeted for biodiesel production. So you can think that they are converting the entire concept of rearing livestock into an assembly line. You grow crops which are used as as fodder, and then the fodder gives you manure, which is then going to be used as biodiesel. Also, they are bringing in foreign fodder directly. They have big corporations now in the market that are selling very, very expensive fodder, and it constantly emphasizes that this is meant to increase milk production. And the Americans, the United States is one of the key firms which is now selling fodder in the country. The third area that is being attacked is bringing in semen for these European and Australian jerseys. I think they are called jerseys. And so we see that they, on one hand, they are going for seed, second, fodder itself as a product, and then trying to bring in semen for breeding amongst our animals, but at the same time, they are also importing livestock from the Netherlands and from Australia. As I said, the landless farmers, majority of them are women, and they control most of the milk market. Although milk is sold only by men, very rarely will a woman go to the market because of patriarchy, because of the religious norms in the country. We don't see women selling the product that they are responsible for producing, but it is men who go and sell. And there is a very big supply of milk through small farmers who act also as, we call them gawalas, milk sellers. Now, how are they attacking the milk sector? And unfortunately, they have used the WTO, the World Trade Organization. There is an agreement in the WTO called the Sanitary and Phytosanitary Measures, SPS it is generally called. The SPS mandates that everybody in their countries use the Codex Alimentarius for creating a standard for the quality of milk to be sold. So Pakistan has set up a body called the Pakistan Pure Food Laws Authority. Pure Food Laws is now following Codex Alimentarius. One of the biggest cities in the country has said that it will stop selling open milk from 2022. And that means that the entire chain of milk supply will go into the hands of corporations. And they are saying this milk which women produce or the small farmers produce are unhygienic, and they are using, it's very, very, it's tragic, and it is actually criminal that medical associations are coming on TV and various media and saying that the milk sold by milk sellers is unhygienic and we should all drink milk from Tetra Packs. So in essence, the Tetra Pak industry and the milk, dairy milk industry are hand in hand trying to get rid of the open market for milk. They have set up milk inspection teams at strategic points across the country, and when these vendors are collecting milk and taking them to the market to sell, they seize the vans, they do inspection, and they have thrown away thousands of liters of milk. So saying that this milk is contaminated, it has chemicals, it has this, it has that. Can you imagine a country which has subsistence farmers? These people are literally hand to mouth, and here our own authorities are destroying milk like that. The three corporations which are very active are Nestle, and recently last year, a company called Friesland Campina, which is a Dutch multinational corporation, has taken 51% share in a Pakistani dairy corporation called Engro, and so now it has renamed itself as Friesland Campina Engro, and they are also very active in promoting Tetra Pak milk. The third corporation is Cargill. Cargill has, in the past year, announced that it will invest more than $200 million in Pakistan over the period of next 3 to 5 years. And the funds will be used to expand Cargill's agriculture, trading, and supply chain in the country. And it highlights dairy, meat, and animal feed business. So they are coming into the country mainly to take over the dairy, meat, and animal feed business. And they are already saying that we have earmarked funds for safety and food traceability efforts. This is what also the Pure Food Law is talking about. They're saying we need to have traceability component verified in the milk that is produced. When does the traceability factor comes in? Only when the milk has to go out of the country. So we know very well now that this is very much a huge attack on Pakistan's milk sector, trying to get the milk out of the country. And I will now just finish with a comment that Pakistan is #2 in stunting. A recent World Bank report on stunted growth in children says that Pakistan is #2 in stunting and 43% of our children are stunted. 4 out of 10 under 5 years of children are stunted. This is according to the National Nutrition Survey, which was carried out in 2018. And over half of the adolescent girls in Pakistan are anemic. So if this is the condition of our society, that women are highly anemic, children are anemic, are stunted, are going through various issues of uh, unhealthy growth. Why are we throwing away our milk? Why are we taking away a very basic food commodity of our diets? In Pakistan, nearly everybody, especially the rural sector, its main diet is milk. We take milk as milk, we turn it into butter, we turn it into butter oil, we turn it into yogurt, and we turn it into yogurt milk. So there are various forms of food that is made from milk. And if they really take control of this sector, it means that the malnutrition of the country, especially of the children and of women, is going to really exacerbate many, many times. So I will end with that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Astra. Very good information. It shows how the common people's livestock products, how the multinationals are going to take away, and there are a lot of issues related to the businesses and the natural situations in Pakistan. I think it's very common in many other countries as well, but it's very good information for this morning. So at the moment we are recording the whole discussion. Is there any objections from anybody for recording this discussion? So everyone is okay?
I think yes.
Okay. Yeah, if you have any objections, please type on the chat. I see next speaker is going to be Kanaya Subramaniam from India. Is he there? Corina told me that there was a problem with connecting him.
Yes, we're having a little bit of trouble, so maybe you can continue with the next speaker and then we can check again if he's in.
Okay, thank you. So our next speaker is Khadija Razavi. She's from Senesta from Iran. She's also working on the nomadic peoples of Iran. So Khadija, good morning. Can you make your presentation?
I think she's not connected.
She's also not connected. I don't see her name in the list.
Yeah, I don't see her either.
Yeah. So in that case, we'll go to next speaker from Philippines, Giovanni Reyes, from ICA Consortium, Philippines, and also from the territories of life and COVID. It's about the territories of life and COVID-19. So Giovanni.
Oh boy. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, good
we can
morning.
hear you. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning from the Philippines. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this webinar. So far, I have a happy report to everyone that no indigenous person in the Philippines has so far been affected with the COVID-19, especially among my my networks. And probably I should attribute that to the fact that most of the communities that work with us are very close to the territories that have very high biodiversity levels. And you know for a fact that in the Philippines we have 12 to 15 million indigenous peoples who occupy about 6 to 7 million hectares of ancestral territories. And if we see the map where indigenous peoples are located, these are the places where the only remaining creeks, rivers, and watersheds and forests are located. And so I think that the reason why there is a zero rate in the affected people from COVID may be attributed to the fact that they stay and they have protected their territories. I would like to share a very few background of the fact that the fear of diseases or pandemics was one of the reasons why many cultures have suppressed attempts at colonial rule. So in our region, in the Cordillera, for example, we have our ancestors resisted Spanish conquest, partly and largely because the people did not want to be infected with lowland diseases. And this is the reason why our region has asserted its independence. It has asserted its isolation, and that independence and isolation resulted into high biodiversity levels. There are accounts about this, for example, in 1789, where the Dominican friars at that time recorded that Igorots in the Cordillera have practically none of smallpox, venereal disease, and leprosy. They had none about wars, deforestation, tributes, division of land, migrations, and similar things. That's the zero account in 1789. And he said further that the Igorots took sufficient care of the mountains, of the mountain passes, to prevent the entrance of smallpox and other epidemics from the Christians who were fleeing the regions that were affected by smallpox. So this age-old practice of taking sufficient care of our territory has been reactivated since 4 weeks ago, when this dreadful pandemic called COVID-19 started to assault on this planet. And in our practice, in the Kankanaey practice, where I belong, we have such practices like agamang, where we store last year's harvest, so that last year's harvest are today's supply. And these are the reasons why food security and food sovereignty would be ensured. And because of the thinking that it is taboo for any member of the community to go hungry during pandemics, during pestilence, and during time of crisis. And we also have lockdowns. Lockdowns are not new to us among indigenous peoples. We have the ubaya, where no one comes in and no one gets out of the village until the outbreak subsides, which is usually in a few days. And during this restriction, during that period of restriction where nobody is allowed to come in and nobody is allowed to go out, food is distributed in an egalitarian manner. No one is supposed to suffer from hunger. We call it inayan nan maowat. It's taboo to be hungry. There is no worry of food shortage due to the existence of what I mentioned a while ago, as the agamang, where we store the rice harvest. The other nearby communities who are practicing rice terraces or rice terracing are also practicing this kind of food storage. In contrast to what we now see, the current lockdown on a global scale is equivalent to hunger and death. We are all witness to the speed that the virus escalated and without mercy has transformed certain urban areas into death valleys. In contrast to people who live in their territories, in contrast to people who have considered their ancestral territories as sacred, they have zero, up to this time as we speak, they have zero affliction of this pandemic. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that one day in our lives, shaking hands, animated conversations, kinship bonding and community consultations, and life-affirming gatherings would mean the sudden illness and death of any member of our community? No one would have thought of that. Not a single second perhaps would have occurred in our minds that someday our shaking hands and our talking to animatedly with our compatriots and colleagues would mean sudden death. Yet we must also practice this. We have also this stay-at-home practice during Ubaya. But the view there in staying home is that there are some certain rituals that are done. For example, produce smoke, do some firing, small firing to produce smoke, and then do some ritual. This may not be scientifically proven, but the knowledge as practiced by indigenous peoples have proven to be effective in countering or in suppressing these pandemics historically and at present. So there you go. We attribute the fact that our being free from this pandemic is a result of trying to protect the source of the virus. If the virus is said to be sourced from an animal, that is because we have assaulted wildlife. And the reason why wildlife virus has transferred to humans is probably because they have no more habitat to stay put in. We have assaulted them, we have destroyed them, we have deforested them, and this is what we get. But for indigenous peoples, they look at the habitats of animals as sacred in the same manner that Christians look at their cathedrals and their churches as sacred. And to us, among indigenous peoples, we must not forget that the reason why we still have few forests and rivers left is because of the view that these ridges and mountains and creeks and rivers are in themselves sacred. And to that view, and that is the reason why, if you compare the protected area systems and compare to the indigenous community conserved practices, the level of biodiversity is much higher to the level of biodiversity that you find in protected area systems. And the World Bank, which itself has been funding protected areas, has acknowledged that indeed indigenous peoples' territories have higher biodiversity than those called protected area systems. So I think that this kind of thinking, this kind of practice among indigenous peoples, the knowledge of protecting indigenous communities have resulted in preventing, if not restraining, the leakage of virus coming out from the wild and onto human beings. I would like to stress that in our contribution to prevent deforestation and to prevent the devastating impacts of large-scale extractives and the devastating impact of climate change. I'd like to share with you that during the last 3 years, we have mapped our indigenous peoples' territories with global impacts, meaning that even if we have identified and we have mapped and we have declared as conserved areas something like 167,000 hectares of ancestral domains of indigenous peoples community conserved areas. And we had these map areas subjected to analysis by the Washington-based World Resource Institute, which found out that the 10 sites that we have mapped is equivalent to 10.5 million, is equivalent to the carbon sequestration of 7 million cars annually. So you let's just think that if that is only 167,000 hectares, you can imagine what 1,000, tens of thousands of hectares mapped and preserved would do to protect humanity. And it is not for this. It is not an accident that 80% of the planet coincides with or are located within people's territories, within the territories of indigenous peoples. And having stated that, I would like to, I sent my copy of the PowerPoint, and maybe Isis can share it with the members of this group. And for any clarification on that what I shared, they can just email me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. And it's very good information from the history to the current COVID and climate change to the livestock, and also how the indigenous communities are protecting all these livestock, the animal husbandry, and how important for us to maintain those kind of areas continually. And he studied political science and law, and he earned a master's degree in urban and regional planning. Since 2009, he has been the Secretary General to the National Coalition of Indigenous Peoples in the Philippines, and also is currently member of the JEF Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group and honorary member of the Global ICA Consortium, and dedicating entirely to defending the rights of the indigenous people. So thank you once again, Mr. Reyes. Our next speaker going to be Elvira Maratoa, and she's the program officer of the National Pasture Users Association of Kyrgyzstan. It's an NGO working on the national level with more than 400 local communities in Kyrgyzstan, representing the livestock sector. The association is the voluntary union of the pasture users aimed to promote their interests and protect their rights. Elvira?
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, please.
I cannot turn on my video, unfortunately. It's not allowed.
I have the same problem. Yeah, please. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Do you
see me?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait. So good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting for this meeting. So I have some small presentation about the situation in my country. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So first, I would like to tell a little bit about my organization. It's the National Pasture Users Association, and our main mission is to preserve and improve the condition and quality of Kyrgyz pastures by supporting the sustainable development of our members as pasture users communities through their capacity building, advancing opportunities, and protecting their rights. Our association is the big network, including more than 400 pasture user communities, consists of local farmers, livestock keepers, veterinaries, and herders. It's more than 65% of the population living in rural area. So historically, livestock became not only the main income generating activity, but also the cultural identity and integrity of Kyrgyz people. So agriculture is very important for us, and it's the main welfare basis and livelihood in our country. So this COVID-19 pandemic came to our country a little bit later than in other countries. It was in March when first infected people came from abroad. And now you can see the statistics. We have more than 600 confirmed cases, and the good thing is that half of them almost recovered. But it may seem not bad in the framework of the world statistics, but the ratio on our national level is gloomy, and this amount is very substantial for us. The worst thing is that it's only beginning of the spread of this infection in our country, and the situation is not predictable. So we see people's reflection led to the different reactions. Some people are, of course, frustrated and get into panic, and some are blaming communities in losing their ethical and moral and spiritual principles. And also we have some groups of people who are denying the threat. I would like to mention that villagers try to find ways out by using different religious and spiritual activities like praying, animal sacrificing, and other activities. So there is an opposite reaction in cities, in rural areas. When urban population face the lack of food, service, and medical issues, villagers are cut off the access to the agricultural and livestock markets, where they usually could sell meat, milk, and other livestock products, and purchase requisites to move to summer pastures. It's the season for it now. So what do we see? It's that it has a direct impact on the human right to adequate food and nutrition. Actually, for all of us, it's food security issue. So also, as a network organization, we are on the constant contact with our members, pasture users, and what do we see today is that the main problem and challenge there is lockdown and checkpoints and limited transportation, especially for agriculture equipment. Due to the start of farming season, the good thing is that local authorities are allowed to move without any barriers and limits for pasture users, livestock keepers to the summer pastures, and veterinary services are ready to support this process on time and let herders to start grazing on time according to their plans. And also we can mention the positive developments due to the current situation. We can see that there are so many new leaders, especially on the local level, who are ready to support livestock keepers and agriculture producers. They arrange direct delivery agricultural products both on the local markets and in the cities. And also we see that many companies support this process and involved in the philanthropy process. So it's a good thing. And also we see that local communities became more creative and they try to solve the problems using new technologies there were created a lot of chats and groups in popular messengers like WhatsApp and Telegram, where they can share the problems and find solutions without crossing checkpoints. And the good thing is that local authorities also presented there, so we can react immediately, and in some emergency cases act immediately and solve it. As example, I would like to share the situation in a village where it was the lack of seeds for seasonal planting in the field, and usually it was imported, but this year it was covered by the offer of the local public seed fund. And it shows the increasing creativity and solidarity and team spirit of local communities, and we're glad to see that among our members. So summarizing, we see that situation is not predictable, and nobody can say when it will lift out, and taking account the farming season started and changing weather last weeks, nobody can calculate for now at least the losses and damage created by the pandemic in agriculture sector of my country. But everybody understands that it will have the long-term effect, not only for the sector, but also for the whole country. So for now, we concluded that, first of all, we have to pay more deep attention to the traditional knowledge and create a strategy of self-sufficiency, taking into account the needs of local communities. Public food purchasing for military, school, and hospital should be encouraged to use small producers. Second, we have to reconsider our development strategies with greater emphasis on the environmental issues and its impact on destruction and degradation of farming. And it's very important for future to protect our pastoral communities, recover our ecosystem, and provide food security. And last one, we have to think about the short-term and long-term pandemic control programs, because for today our government is not well prepared, and it's not clear what to do in general, and especially in agriculture and livestock sector. As a national association, we see our role in preventing measures and deep analysis of everything that occurs now. And we are, of course, we cannot solve all the problems of our members immediately and by ourselves. So that's why we are ready to support them by raising their awareness and providing this relevant and proven information. And we try to participate on the different online meetings like this and others to be aware of activities made in other countries, and to create the solutions for our members based on the international experience. So it's all for today, and thanks for your attention.
Thanks, Elvira. So very good information again. I think everyone is having a hard time living in a very bad time for all of us. So stay safe. I heard that now Mr. Kannayan Subramaniam is connected. So he is an activist, an expert on the trade issues, and he was following WTO for many years. He co-founded South Indian Coordination Committee of Farmers Movements, and he is also currently a member of the Lavia Campesina in South Asia. So, Mr. Kannayan, can you
hear me? Hello?
Oh, yes. Please.
Yeah, very good. So, friends, Vanakkam, that is Namaskar from India. I live in South India, in Tamil Nadu. This unprecedented lockdown, we never seen such a lockdown. As my Filipino colleague said, we never been experienced such kind of lockdown in our lifetime here. This has put
Hello. Looks like we lost him.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, it's echoing, but can you speak again?
Are you able to hear me now? Hello? Are you able to hear me now? Actually, I'm using mobile phone. Hello.
It come and go.
Clear now?
A little better.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, now it's
And
okay.
now?
Yeah, good.
So,
Now go.
so I'm just using my phone. I will make a very sharing about the condition in India. The lockdown.
I think we lost him again. Have we lost him, Corina? Oh, Isis?
Hello.
Hello.
Are you able to hear? Hello.
Yeah, it is sometimes dropping.
Oh, is it okay now? Hello.
Kanayan, let me call you on WhatsApp, okay? And then you can speak. I have
I'm able to.
Yeah.
I'm able to hear you all.
Yeah, but we can't hear you. I mean, you start speaking and then it gets lost. Shall I try calling?
Yeah, maybe you can try him on WhatsApp. So meantime, we will go to the other speaker, the last speaker in this list. This Jian Ji is here. Jian, are you there?
Hi.
Oh yeah, okay. Let me introduce you first. He's from China. He's a Chinese independent filmmaker, visual artist, writer, and founder of the Good Food Fund under the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation, which is a forefront organizing promoting sustainable food systems in China. So welcome. So Jian, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I just turned on the video just to say hi. I probably turn it off just in case, just to avoid the same problem. Because I'm using my data. Okay. Yeah, hi. Thank you for inviting me to this conference. And I'm very glad to be able to share some of the our perspective in China. I think this kind of dialogue among Asian organizations are very important because we've been working in this area for a long time, but mostly the dialogues are actually across the Pacific or with European countries. We really cherish this opportunity to be able to speak with partner organizations in Asia. And especially after hearing what the other organizations were presenting. I really like the multi-stakeholder kind of approach, from indigenous people, from women, from communities. This is something that we really still lacking in China in terms of working in the food space. And I'm actually, this COVID-19 actually is not new for Chinese, because the last time I participated in this dialogue was in March or something, already, or February or March. There was the virus threat was already going on, and the lockdown was already in place in China. So for us, it's something that we've been having for the whole year now, so far. Actually, I got stuck in Nepal since the beginning of January. So I've been in Nepal for 4 months now, and I've been learning so much actually. I'm actually staying on a farm here. I've been learning so much about traditional agriculture here in South Asia. Very inspirational. A lot of things have happened in the last 4 months in China. I'm going also, with the limited time I have, I'm only going to outline some of the things that we've been pursuing as an organization working in the food space. We are called the Good Food Fund. We work to promote good food among the public, and also we identify leadership in the government, in academia, and in the businesses, and also among the youth, to push for a more sustainable food system transformation in China, which we all know is very, very important, because China is the largest food producer and also a food consumer. So since the outbreak of the COVID-19 in mid-January, the term public health has really, being used all the time in the media and by ordinary people. This is a term that people have heard of before, but they never really register. But now with this COVID-19, unfortunately, with all these people dying, family broken, people started to really look into this sphere of public health, which have some overlapping with personal health, but they're not the same thing. And at least for what we have the evidence for now, the outbreak started. This is not 100% confirmed, but at least what most people believe in now started from this wet market, unregulated wet market, and in Wuhan, by people eating and the animal trade of wild animals. So I've been actually receiving a lot of media interviews about what is this wet market in China, and I've been trying to explain wet market. This term wet the market doesn't actually exist in the Chinese language. What the people in the West refer to wet market actually includes a whole range of different markets in the Chinese context. So you can't really say the wet market and then close down all the wet market, and then actually in China people are thinking of different things. So the term public health has entered the public discourse more than ever before. So we think this is a very, very important opportunity for activists to advocate for food system transformation that is pro-health and also pro food security, for safety. And so in the past few months, we have seen the Chinese government banning wildlife trades for food. But on the other hand, we have also seen the industry trying to get animals that were previously considered as wildlife into the list of farm animals. So they want to expand the list of farm animals. So the trade of these animals can be allowed. So we have been advocating for, the perspective that, this is, yeah, it's important that we take new regulations on wild animals, but it's also important to remember is the concentration of animals, of large number of animals that actually is very, very risky. Whether it's wild animal or what is quote unquote domestic animals. So any large concentration of animals of that kind are potentially risky. So this is a angle that we try to push for change to, because I'm, as introduced earlier, my professional background was actually in filmmaking, and I got interested in this area only after I made a short documentary on meat production and its impact on livelihood of rural communities, on the environment. And I realized back then, only back then, that the increasing concentration of livestock production has led to the loss of livelihood for many, many small farmers, which is also why I find so fascinating when I'm living here in Nepal to discover, there's a lot of the traditional way of food production is still here, but it's also losing at the same time. So it's really important that we push for this. And another big change since the outbreak of the COVID-19 in China is that some cities, like the city of Shenzhen, which is like a major city, one of the most developed city in China, across from Hong Kong, has banned the eating of dogs and cats, companion animals. And there's another city also bordering Macau in the same province, also banned the trade of companion animal for food. So that's another big progress in China in terms of animal for food. And just yesterday, there was this central government media outlet. They published this one research on the Yangtze River, pollution of the Yangtze River. They have done so these researchers in these major universities in Shanghai and the Shanghai area, not just Shanghai, like Hangzhou and the Nanjing. They have done research on the pollution of the Yangtze River by antibiotics. And they have found out half of the pregnant women in their body, they have found overdose of antibiotics. And they have found more than 80% of children in their body, they have found antibiotics used on animal farms, used on animals. So that's very telling, like, how serious this issue is of industrial farming, of factory farming of animals. Because here in Nepal, I saw like small farmers raising just one cow and 1 or 2 cows. You don't, and compare with the large livestock in China, the heavy use of, or the preventative use of antibiotics was really very, very serious. So, and the lockdown, of course, on one hand, largely prevent rural communities from contracting the disease. Is quite effective in that way. But on the other hand, it has caused loss of incomes for many people from rural households. So right now, China is about half of the Chinese population is rural. So about 700 million population in China is rural. So a lot of them, many of them were working in factories or in the cities. And now, because of the lockdown, they have lost at least a month of, varies from city to city. Like in Wuhan, it's in lockdown for like three months, 2 months. So like so very at least a month of income has been lost, and gradually life in China has resumed some level of normality compared with before, but still there's a lot of concerns about the widespread and second wave of the widespread of the so for the rural community there's a big impact. Another impact is what we can see from the COVID-19 is the how we can build a resilient food system. We have seen so many animal farmers who raise a lot of animals. They have been, either like starving their animals to death, or they've been bury them, or so because the lockdown, there was a shortage of feeds for these animals, for this large number of animals, which I also saw here in Nepal. So the farm, they raise only a very small number of animals, so they don't have this problem that the farm that I live on. But there's a nearby farmer who raised about 400 or 500 chicken. Basically, this guy has slaughtered all the chicken and sold them. And so, because he was running out of feed. So this is one area we also have been looking into, how to build a resilient food system. So I don't have much time left. So two things we've been working on since the COVID-19. One is we are building like a coalition of organizations both inside China and outside China to work with China on food system transformation. Excuse me, because we all know, working in China is very critical, not because of the domestic consumption in China, production in China, but also because many Chinese investors are looking elsewhere to invest in on farms, on food productions. Like in Australia, Chinese investors are investing on dairy farms, and in Africa, Chinese investors are investing. So this is very important that we can look at it both ways. On one way, if China doesn't change, it poses a lot of risks. And on the other hand, if we are able to bring some level of food system transformation in China, then it might become a good force for change also around the world. So we are trying to build this China Food Council that would include different organizations from different fields, like climate works, biodiversity, animal welfare, all things that considered to be related with food. And on our next edition of Good Food Summit, which will be our fourth edition, we are going to hold online first time in October. Will be a multi-stakeholder forum, so I hope to engage some of you as well for that. And the second worth mentioning is since COVID-19 outbreak, is that we've been approaching municipal government in Wuhan, where we all know now is the considered as the ground zero of the pandemic, because we think Wuhan, more than any other city in China, will be more eager to embrace a different kind of way of looking at their food system. And we work with we try to work with the municipal government in Beijing before for last Good Food Summit. And while we sat down with these guys at the Beijing municipal government, they started to say, they hear what we were saying, what I was doing, and they said, oh, we realize that we don't actually have a government agency that can deal with you, because our agriculture department only deal with agriculture, and restaurants, food service is dealt with taken care of by our commercial department. So we don't have one committee or one department in the organization that deal with does the same work as you do. So we already have apart from Wuhan, we already have some other cities interested, some other big cities like Chengdu, interested in working with us on this to have some kind of council or committee at the municipal level to look at the food production in a holistic approach, from production to transportation to consumption, all this. So hopefully, if this project gets implemented, will be the first municipal level kind of food policy change in China. So, and as you know, China has a very different political system. If we want to bring for change, number one, we are 100% Chinese organization. So that really gives us the grounding for work in these areas. We are a national foundation. And second is that we don't want to work with the central government level first, because any change of that kind of scale, the central government doesn't want to take that kind of risk. It always starts with experiments at the city level or at the provincial level, and then when the central government see the benefits, we'll gradually move up. So yeah, I think that's what I have time for. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jan. It's interesting to see how changes are happening inside China and how you're going to work with them. It's a nice bird sound comes from your background as well, so I enjoyed that. Thank you. I'm not sure whether Mr. Kanayan is still in the webinar.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, can we hear you now?
I'm able to hear you all. I hope in listening to the Chinese friends presentation. I hope you are able to hear me.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so I want to make a very brief sharing. India brought in lockdown, which was very unplanned. And the first 1 week of lockdown was very hard for the people, because they have treated this lockdown in 2 ways. One, of course, it is a health approach. The other is a law and order approach. Whoever were seen on the road were brutally beaten up, and it was a kind of a brutal approach towards asking people to stay home. This has created a lot of fear among people, including the patients, to go to their farms and to their crop animals. But quickly, government realized that it is very important to agriculture and livestock keeping from the lockdown. They give exemption so that farmers move into the field and take care of the animals where so not a big issue on that. The main problem is, for example, in my province, no meat shops, no chicken shops are allowed to be operated. So for the last 1 month, no sale of meat. They allowed it. A lot of people rushing towards the meat shops. So social distancing was stopped it. This is also having a criminal approach to this, because some of the daily Hello. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I think if you turn off the video, it will be better. The connection might be better.
Some of the Muslim friends who have they already contracted this coronavirus. To those people who attended this religious meeting in Delhi, and they were a large number from Tamil Nadu. So there was a information spread, misinformation, that almost all the Muslims will spread coronavirus to people. And most of the Muslims, most of the meat shops were run by the Muslims. So meat shops are banned. This is one of the main issue. As far as milk production is concerned, and milk production continues to happen in India, mostly it is backyard milk production, and the cooperatives are continue to procure milk from the farmers, and also private people are continue to buy milk from the farmers. That is uninterrupted. But the main issue will come later, because the byproducts of the milk, like ice creams, cakes, or ghee, all those things, the consumption from the industrial side has come to cease to be. So that will have its own impact on the milk procurement in the future. I would like to say that as of now is not a big impact on the livestock keeping, because most of the livestock keeping in India is the backyard and farm-based, the small peasants holdings. Industrial production also not disturbed, because all those things are exempted from the lockdown. My worry is that a large number of people who are staying home and they have become unemployed, the huge unorganized sector laborers who are stuck in the place where they are not able to do anything. I'm a vegetable grower. I'm working hard to sell my cabbage. Still 30 metric tons of cabbage unsold in my field. The same freight is for to make some money. There are no place coming to their farms. There's equal supply available from the farmers, peasants, and there is no demand for that.
Looks like we are losing him.
Hello, are you able now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a brief so I'm able to hear my own voice back.
We can hear you sometime, but it's breaking.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think I have to 1 minute. I have to stop the Zoom. I stopped the Zoom. Is it okay now?
Yes, better.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I think we have lost him again.
Hello?
Yes, please
Hello?
go ahead. Yeah, please
Am
go
I
ahead.
making it now?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, very well.
Kanayan, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. We are listening.
Okay. Thank you very much. So this is the brief reality in India, but we do not know how it will
progress in the coming days, because there are major cities like Mumbai, Chennai, and many big cities are under the hotspots of coronavirus spread. And the city people are not able to access the food of choice they want, even though the supply is ready with farmers. There are a lot of like here, not only the coronavirus chain is is made to disconnect, the agriculture food supply chain also disturbed. This is not a good idea to a country like India, because yesterday, a day before yesterday, and huge number of people were rushing to the markets to buy vegetables and other groceries. If the food supply chain continue to be disturbed like, then there is going to be a big problem for the people to access food. So this is the reality here. And if any questions you want to ask, I can discuss. And I was not very much prepared to make a presentation like this, and because I have been fighting to sell my cabbage all the time, getting a number of phone calls from morning to evening. Yeah, so you are free to ask me any questions, then it can go like an interaction session.
Thank you, Mr. Kanayan. I think although there was a breaking in the voice, but we hear most of the important parts. So it's very sad that so you are not able to sell your product, your crops. I think that's the situation in many countries, including Sri Lanka, and many people were not able to sell their vegetables and other products. So because of the curfew and lockdown in many areas. So we have been listening to all the speakers for almost like 1.5 hours. We have 27 participants joining in this webinar. I already see Vijayan has raised some questions to Giovanni. I think we should allow few questions at this moment, maybe 2 to 3 questions at the beginning, so then we can go another round of questions. So who wants to go first?
Yes, hi, my name is Sahil and I'm phoning from India. I just have a quick question to any one of the panelists who can maybe answer. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, Sahil, yeah.
Great, thank you. So we, I mean, of course, you heard from the panelists, and thank you so much for this webinar. There is a clear consensus where people are saying that, of course, the livelihood of small-scale farmers, of course, is being affected. We have read reports that the virus was the result of the infection was transferred from either the wet markets in China or from the wildlife, consumption of wildlife to humans. So there are, of course, reports which are coming from there, coming from those things. How do the panelists see that if indeed there is now clear evidence that the virus was contracted from wild animals? So, and we've also seen that people now are slowly moving away from eating chicken or any other meat because of fear that they might just get the virus. How do you see the impact of that on the farming industry, and also on the fact that farm animals are also sometimes now treated poorly with the fear that they can transfer diseases to humans. So just thoughts on that. Thank you.
Let's go to another question as well. Vijayan, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Hemanta. And thank you for this very informative across the board webinars that's organized on livestock issue especially. My question, I had already typed in my question that was essentially, originally the first question was to Asra. I mean, her analysis about Pakistan was very, very insightful. I just wanted her to shed some more light regarding the impact COVID infection is having on farming communities, the extent of the pandemic in total Pakistan, and whether farming communities are in a position to provide some sort of new levels of hygienic and secure milk and meat products, which seems to be now the increasing demand of consumers too, especially in the middle class cities and urban centers. I say this also because of some of the experiments, like there is this interesting experiment in India that has been going on, not from NGOs or activist groups, but from farmers themselves. There is a farmers cooperative called the Farmery, which has really stepped up their game on serving hygienic products, glass bottle milk to households in cities, etc. They're also selling a lot of vegetables through their organic network. So, my question was to Asra, whether Pakistani farmers are in a situation to even consider stepping up this particular aspect of safety, hygiene, etc., keeping in mind the fact that after a health crisis, the world is definitely going to focus a lot more on so-called hygienic, secure, safe, transparent mechanisms of meat and milk delivery in a country like Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we respond into the first question then?
Is that me or is it in somebody else?
If you want to respond to the first question as well, so please go ahead. And the second question definitely for you.
I only took down what was asked of me. I don't know what the first question was. I'm sorry, I just didn't write it down. So I will just respond to the Pakistani context. During my talk, I forgot to talk about COVID-19 totally. The impact of COVID-19 on milk sellers, the small milk sellers, has been that because bakeries and small restaurants, tea shops, everything was under lockdown. So the consumption of milk went down sharply. What happened was that the small milk sellers were not able to sell milk, but the Nestle's and the Alpers, those who had chillers, they have these huge trucks with the refrigerators in their in big containers, and they are called chillers here. The chillers were able to buy the milk. They reduced the price. The going price before COVID was about rupees 50 to 45 per liter from the woman directly. Now, after the COVID-19, and because everything was under lockdown, they refused to buy for more than 28 rupees. So the price of milk per liter fell down to 28 to 30. And they were hoarding milk because they have the capacity to put milk into these chillers and preserve it. And they also produce byproducts like butter and butter oil and yogurt even now they are producing. So we could see how they were able to control the market and take advantage of the very low price that they were giving to the women. And women had no choice because we all know milk is perishable and they could not really keep it. I asked them, why are you not even keeping it and making buttermilk? Because buttermilk, ghee, we call it ghee. Ghee, it is butter oil, which goes for it's quite expensive. The traditional butter oil, because it is pure and it has considered very healthy. But most people, because of the lockdown also, were not buying these products. Everybody was facing scarcity of cash. So that was one thing which was happening specifically in context to milk. The other thing, when you ask about hygienic products, my fear is I'm really, really very scared that this is going to open up avenues for the big corporations to talk about hygiene. Because the small farmers, I have worked with farmers all my life, and I find them, especially in milk production, pretty hygienic. They cannot afford not to be hygienic when it comes to milk. And it is after the milk has been produced by the women that it goes into the middleman's hands, then the chemicals and other additives are put. This is the kind of propaganda which is now going to get very big in terms of what is hygienic. And I think we need to really, really create something very big, very quickly, to talk about that hygiene is part of farming communities when it comes to food. And meat is more problematic. I totally agree, and especially with respect to cities. But in Pakistan, we still rather go and buy fresh meat from the butcher's shop than go to these malls where they are selling frozen meat. And in general, people will simply not buy frozen meat because there is a big distrust of where has this meat come from? Is it even? We have a practice of calling it halal. There is a particular way that Muslims slaughter an animal, and hence, I think that the question asked by Vijay is very, very critical, and I think the industry will take advantage of it. It is up to us that who work with small farmers, who are coalitions of small farmers themselves, to start setting up standards of hygiene and demonstrating that hygiene is actually inbuilt in farmers' production. Otherwise, the industry already in Pakistan is creating such a big fuss on milk hygiene that we have been actually we have been very angry. We have been criticizing the industry. We have even criticized the medical associations for doing something so nasty to the livelihood of small farmers, and these small farmers are mostly women. So I don't think we are seeing anything of that nature in Pakistan as yet, whether in meat or in milk. People are used to open markets, are used to farmers selling their products. We have like vendors selling vegetables. The organic market is still very, very small in Pakistan, and so that's not the scene at all in Pakistan as yet. I'm assuming it's bigger in other parts of South Asia, maybe in India, but in Pakistan, something like that has not occurred as yet. But I think you put a very good question, and I think we should really work on it. Otherwise, we will find that the small farmers will be victimized by the industry's propaganda, which it is already doing with respect to milk in Pakistan. Thank you.
Thanks, Asra. Yes.
Sorry, Kanayan would like to respond to that.
Yes, Isis.
Go ahead.
Are you able to hear me? Hello? Is this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
See, one of the first and foremost rumor was, are you able to hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, first and foremost rumor was spread in India was that coronavirus might spread through industrial poultry and piggery. So people stopped buying. The price has fallen. In India, poultry also managed by the farmers in a very decentralized manner. Whatever the company playing, they are aggregating it and marketing it, and there are direct marketing also. A huge impact was brought on the small scale chicken growers. And very recently, I was in conversation with a veterinary doctor who is specialized in the wildlife after there is a news that coronavirus is transmitting to tigers also. The government of India is implementing a program before feeding the tigers and animals kept in zoos. Those meats are UV treated. I do not know if this is happening to the animals kept in the zoos. This might happen to human consumption also. We do not know. Before concluding that there is no clear-cut evidence that from where this novel coronavirus started transmitting from animal to human and human to human. Human to human, we know for sure that it happened in Wuhan. But there is no evidence clearly saying that this happened from the wet market in Wuhan animal market. This needs to be investigated. There is a strong case by many experts that this might have originated from the industrial livestock, the way livestock produced in China and also elsewhere in the world. So where I would like to conclude, and this question needs to be investigated by the scientific fraternities.
Thanks, Kanaya.
Over to you.
Yeah, I think there's, thank you for that answer. And also there's a question from Sahil, similar to the same. So whether the farm animals been affected as well. Anybody else wanted to respond to that? Anybody has read any information or anybody has first-hand information?
May I?
Yes, please.
Can I intervene?
Yes, Asra.
In Pakistan, as I had mentioned earlier, women, because everybody, as I said, 89% of the small farmers are landless. So there is a practice amongst landless farmers to rent land, leased land for a year. And it is very expensive. We were talking to farmers after this COVID-19, especially when the price of milk started falling. And we were inquiring how will the farmers, the landless farmers, meet the lease payments as their income has dropped really sharply. And the answer was that many of them may have to let go of land because they are unable to produce fodder. They only rent land because they want to grow fodder for the livestock. So if they cannot pay the lease, then they cannot grow fodder. At the same time, the fodder prices in the market have also increased. So you see the COVID, the virus is having a very detrimental impact on the lives of the landless farmers. And I emphasize that the issue is not of COVID-19 in our analysis. The issue lies in the structural impediments that our governments have not corrected. I heard Ying, the Chinese filmmaker, saying that, sorry, I can't remember what to say. The issue of public health. He emphasized the word public health, how much it has become something of concern and in people's minds. And that's exactly the point we need to make, that the way privatization has been carried out by the United States, specifically with the WTO in mind, and then the bilateral agreements, the IMF and the World Bank, they have really beaten each government they could to implement privatization, deregulation, and trade liberalization. And that is the reason that we are unable to maintain our centuries-old traditions of feeding ourselves. It's not because we don't know how to, it's simply because there is no land reform. land has not been distributed to the people because, and on the other hand, land is being leased out to big corporations from outside the country. And China is one of the very big contenders in Pakistan for land now. So it's not about COVID-19, however big it might be. It's actually because our structural issues have not been addressed. So if there is no public health, there is no public subsidy to the farmers, then of course, any kind of disease, big or small, is going to impact farmers in a very big way. Thank you.
Thank you, Azra. I think we can allow a few more questions now. We have a few other people listening to this webinar. Anyone want to raise a question?
Hi there. I was just typing my question in. It's Jackie here from Protection. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Great. I just have a very short question to the panelists. How would they describe sustainable trade of animal products within sustainable food systems?
Thank you. I think question was clear. How can we describe the sustainable food production?
Well,
anybody? Yeah, please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. If we look at the ancestral domains as source of water, it can supply, for instance, in our country, it can supply 20 to 25 million Filipinos of the necessary resources to keep their agricultural lands productive. And it's not just water. We also have animals. Yes, we have wild pigs. We have wild boars that our community members hunt for, and these are usually used for festivities, used for cultural practices that thank the spirit world for a bountiful harvest, for example. So the hunting and gathering of fruits is based mainly on the view that we do not just hunt for consumerism purposes. There are reasons for it. This has since been affected because of the entry of commercial goods, which we are told to buy, consume, and that it is good for us. And at the same time, the entry of large-scale agricultural practices. And this pandemic is apparently being used to expand the intrusion of large-scale plantation corporations into our ancestral lands. And these are one of the reasons why dispossession of our communities occur, and as a consequence, the loss of sources of water. And it is as if hunger is a new thing. No, it is not. Hunger has since been coexisting amongst lowland Filipinos for a century now, because lowland rice tenant farmers, because they have to borrow rice from the landlords just to eat. And this has been made chronically a big failure. It's a chronic failure of land reform. I agree to the idea that the entry of this pandemic has exposed the general weakness, or the weakness of the neoliberal policy of large-scale agricultural plantations. And we are being asked to plant, as if we don't know how to plant. And you do not know that the rice terraces that we have carved out over in our mountains can expand halfway around the globe, which means that we have been doing planting as a lifestyle. And here you ask us to plant, 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 plant. And yet you tell us to open up our ancestral domains to large-scale plantation companies, and thereby introduce exactly what people have experienced in terms of food insecurity. So when I made a letter to the Department of Agriculture to stop this foolish idea of allowing large-scale plantations to tell us what to plant in our ancestral domains, I said that they should focus instead on getting these idle lands being held by landlords, because these idle lands are the ones that are creating hunger in this country. So the epic failure of land reform in this country, the indigenous people's community should not be made to as a response to their epic failure. We resist any form of land conversions that are from the perspective of the old norm of converting our lands into so-called production lands or resource lands. So let's maintain the biodiversity of indigenous people's communities. And if for a reason really that the virus has come from an animal, then all the more reasons that we should preserve wildlife habitat, because that's where they are. And we are sure to say that the higher the level of the biodiversity of habitats are, the lesser the leakage can happen. And the more that we restrain viruses from these animals coming out from the habitat, when we protect and we respect this biodiversity protected by indigenous peoples themselves.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 more questions coming on the chat. So can we ask Caroline and Vince to raise those questions? I don't know whether we have enough time for the responses, but can you both of you raise the questions, please? Caroline first.
Well, hello, hi everyone. It was just a question to Elvira. Has the NP, the National Pasture User Group, started implementing the recommendations together with the government, or it's still at a consideration stage? Thank you.
Okay, Vince, please, you can also ask a question.
Hi, thank you. I'm Vince of World Animal Protection and based in the Philippines. Here's my question. How do you think will COVID-19 affect the way we grow our food? Basically, our relationship with food and food security. Will it strengthen corporate and intensive farming, or will it increase or increase a more decentralized production? What do you think, from your perspective as a group, what do you think are the new vulnerabilities you've seen so far that will become a possible norm? Thank you so much.
Okay, we have 1 more question from Sweta. Can you ask the question, Sweta?
Hi, thank you everyone for the amazing presentation. My question in particular was to Jianyi, and I have like a 2-part question. And the first is that I know that, like, I've heard that the wet market in China, especially Wuhan, is already open again, and I'm wondering what sort of got China to take that decision, and does it have an impact on COVID-19 numbers? We do see they're not rising, but I'm wondering what triggered that decision. And the second thing was that given that China is the only country which has gone through the first wave of COVID-19 and has now emerged and is, restoring its economy, is there any lesson for other countries to learn from China? Thank you.
Okay, can Jian start with short answer to that?
Sure, thank you for the question. The wet market, as I said earlier, includes a really wide range of different markets. So what we have been advocating now is that to really regulate the animal trade in these places. It's really not realistic to close all the markets that under the term wet markets. But we have been working with other organizations that really need to advocate for regulation of animal trades. in those live animal trades in those markets. And in terms of lessons, we have been organizing webinars. So really welcome to join. We just organized a webinar for food services with between China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and some US organizations. So we'll share information about that. Thank you.
Okay. So there was a question from Caroline about the recommendations, how the government is using those recommendations. That was question to Elvira, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in the beginning, it was announced that the emergency situation in our country, and all villagers were in the lockdown. So in the beginning, nobody paid attention to the started farming season, but due to the consultations of our experts with especially representatives from the Ministry of Agriculture, taking account the claims from the farmers, and as a result, yes, it was allowed to move, as I mentioned it before, free mobility for agricultural equipment and herders to the summer pastures with support of farmers. So yes, we can say that our consultations are started to work in our country, and but we stay collect the claims from our members to be aware and to react as soon as possible. So this is the first step of our cooperation with our government. Thanks.
Thanks, Elvira. So there was a question from Vince about the whether the COVID-19 will change the way we grow our food, and whether it's going to be more cooperative, or whether it's an intensive farming, or whether it's increase the decentralized production. And he was asking whether there are new vulnerabilities you see. Anybody wants to respond to that question?
I could respond, but if there's anybody else who wants to respond, then I will not talk.
Yeah, Asra, you can, and then we'll open for others as well.
Okay, I think everybody, at least the city people who have been more impacted by this COVID-19 in terms of food access, I think are more conscious of the fact that people have to be self-sufficient in food. That is a new learning, I think, in Pakistan, and I think it's a general new learning from the literature that we have been reading for the world. And I think the vulnerabilities people know, it's not going to be what will take hold. It will be how will people's organizations intervene and create that space for overcoming the vulnerabilities that we saw, whether it was public health or it was access to food or growing sustainable, hygienic food. And there is now, even before COVID-19, there was for the city people, the more educated, middle class, upper middle class people, the context of hygienic food, organic food was there. And I think it's going to be a fight. The corporations will also, of course, come up with their own propaganda. And they will, of course, because they have so much power, that they will try to twist our governments again to reach out and say they have the answer. It is up to us again that no, we have the answer, the people have the answer, the women have the answer, the indigenous people, the landless farmers, the pastoralists. If we don't come out very quickly and very sharply and state sustainable methods of farming, what we have been trying for food sovereignty for the past almost 20 years now, 21 years now, 96, I think it came out. Unless we come and again claim that space, and I think COVID-19 is a very big opportunity for the people who have fought for sustainable production and consumption to come out and make that demand. So it will depend on our struggles, how quick our struggles come into the open and start demanding and showcasing what COVID-19 could do to the entire world. Nobody could have believed what happened in these 2-3 months. Nobody would have believed that it was possible, and it has been possible, not only in terms of sustainable food, but also climate change. I think it's a very good time to push. They kept on saying, no, we cannot close industries, we cannot close industries, and they had to close every damn industry in the world. And so that's what we need to push. Yes, it can be done. Let's do it in a way that doesn't hurt people's livelihoods and it doesn't hurt the environment. It's really a fight. I don't think there is going to be one or the other. It's going to be how we fight for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Asra. Mr. Kanayan also has a response to that question. Mr. Kanayan?
Me?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I want to be very, very frank and honest that we do not have a very quick response. Very clear response to this question. The sustainability is the question, not just now, it is remaining always. As far as Via Campesina and many social movements are concerned, we are saying food sovereignty. That means control over food production should predominantly lie with the farmer, small and marginal peasants. So that solution is always there. That solution is more relevant in this pandemic. But what I'm seeing as a farmer, as a primary food producer, there are some good things are happening. I took Twitter to try to sell my cabbage as the normal market has completely fallen flat. No buyers were coming to my farm to buy my cabbage. So I have tagged two biggest industrial houses in India. One is Anand Mahendra and another is Ratan Tata. My small video and request went viral, and there are a lot of consumers in the cities responding to my Twitter, and they reached me out over phone. There is a loud thinking now that how to establish direct linkage between consumers and the primary producers. There is a lot of pressure on the primary producers to elevate themselves, not just producers, but also they have to market it. They have to reach out the needy directly. And the big industrial, modern corporate food chains were of no use for me in helping me out. And neither the modern food chain or the traditional one, this was of any use to help me. There's quite a lot of dialogue is happening between consumers and farmers directly. And farmers are now coming to know that what is that available with them. And consumers are also trying to get to know that what is available with which farmer in which area like that. I'm pretty sure that this is the beginning of some good connections which started happening. I stay positive. This novel coronavirus epidemic and pandemic will bring both negative things, but a lot of positive things between primary producers and the consumers.
Thank you.
And not anymore production in one continent and export to another continent will be a viable solution in the future. Predominantly local production and local consumption can only feed the people during the time of crisis. Even in the normal time, that should continue. Because now the district borders are closed, state borders are closed, even the village borders are closed. People trying to find something local. whatever we have used for the faraway places are not moving. Only things we can see locally which work. So this is the time everybody started thinking that local production and local consumption, that would be the future.
Okay, thank you very much. We have one more question from Ashima. Ashima, are you there?
Hello. Yes, Himanta.
Yes.
Hear me?
Yes, Ashima. Yeah, we can hear you.
That is why I had put it in the chat box as requested before. But just wanted to know generally from everybody what are their thoughts on and what is the general situation in terms of formation of coalitions with communities who are engaged in animal husbandry activities and largely in the collection of forest produce related activities in different parts of the world. How do friends look at this? I just wanted to kind of hear from people, and also how are we looking at this now, I mean, in the sense of the times ahead.
Okay, thank you. That will be the last question because we have to close this soon. So if anybody wants to respond, please go ahead. We'll appreciate short answers, please. Should I name somebody?
I think the answer is yes. This is the time to strengthen our existing coalitions. I'm part of the Asian Peasant Coalition in Asia, and we have been closely monitoring the situation in our respective member countries. And I think I find that dairy producers especially are not well represented. And on top of that, women dairy farmers. So that's just one section of animal husbandry. And the more we can focus on and look at the problems of small producers, small scale producers, small farmers, landless farmers, that kind of coalition building and key agendas to promote should be promoted for sure. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We spent more than 2 hours in this discussion, so I think it's a very good webinar. I learned a lot. I think the COVID-19, everybody is suffering, every country and every corner is suffering. But at the same time, I think we should see this as an opportunity because we have been talking about the system change all these years. But I think this is a time to understand, much more understand what is the system we have and how we can end to this sort of a system and then bring a new system. How we can, as the people, as the communities, how we can organize better. I think there were a lot of ideas came during these speeches as well as the questions. I think they're very well thought questions, and I want to thank all the panelists for joining us today. So we had Anara, Azra, Kanayan, and unfortunately Khadija was not able to join. We had Giovanni, Elvira, Jian, and all of you. So I want to give the floor to Isis to give some final remarks.
Himanta, sorry, can you hear me? Because there is someone that has been trying to ask under the name user, I think is Kamal, and he's been trying to speak for a while. Maybe we can give him a minute to intervene now. Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
Trying for a while now. So
okay.
Please go ahead. Now you can.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for having this more than 2 hours course, but I'm very sorry I was raising my question and you didn't you didn't give me the time. Thank you very much. See you in next time. Stay safe from the coronavirus. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kamal, you can ask a question. I'm
No,
sorry
I
about
think
that.
I think you don't have time because it is already time. People are very tired. So I can keep my question in the next time if any case there.
Okay, thank you so much for understanding. Yeah, Isis, you have the floor.
Yes, everyone. I am really sorry I dropped. I missed the last part, and I'm sorry, Kamal, if you didn't get to ask your question, but please send it to us. It's always important to hear what you need to say. And actually, we didn't really have anyone from Nepal, so it would be good to hear from you. So just to conclude, well, first, thanks everyone for staying this couple of hours and for being engaged, to the speakers for their commitment despite the technical difficulties. So I think we all agree that we are facing now something that is both a challenge and an opportunity. I think that it's also the moment to start weaving all these connections together. We've heard from our friend in China that they are forming this coalition. We heard from Asra also that they're working with bigger networks, also from Kanayan, how his outreach has brought him also new networks and more articulation, and I think this is the way we need to look at now. And yeah, you know, the Global Forest Coalition hosts the International Alliance on Unsustainable Livestock. We would like to continue strengthening it. So if you would like to become part of this alliance, please reach out to us. As I said before, this is just another step into the campaign we have on unsustainable livestock and alternatives. We're giving it a focus on small peasant farmers, producers, traditional knowledge, pastoralism. So we would like to engage with more people that carry out these practices. So please stay in touch, and yeah, we'll continue to liaise with you. We will share the notes of this conversation as well as the recording, and we hope to keep on building alliances worldwide. So thank you again. Thank you, Hemanta. Thank you, Coraina, who was behind the technical matters. And yeah, please get in touch. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.
Thanks, Coraina, putting this call. And Isis is in the other corner, and it's midnight for her. Thanks for everybody, and we in Sri Lanka, India, and all these countries is a daytime. So thank you so much, everybody. So stay safe. I know everybody is having a hard time, but I believe that it'll become again good for everybody, and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.